So I want to welcome everyone this evening. I want to first tell you what PrepperNet is all about. PrepperNet is a organization of like-minded individuals who believe in personal responsibility. Are we there yet? A personal responsibility, individual freedom, and preparing for disasters of all origins. The group, a virus, an outbreak, a pandemic is a disaster of some sort. This group is aimed at individuals that have an interest in gaining knowledge, acquiring new skills, and networking with like-minded individuals that are preppers and survivalists. So one of the things when you get to know me or you hear anything I say, if you're not in a group, you're going to die. It's kind of funny, but I do believe you need a group, you need an organization, you need a tribe when something happens. So that's what PrepperNet's all about. We actually have meetups, you can see here on the map, in 65 cities in the United States. We're also in 4 other countries. So we have a leader in each one of these cities that will run meetings. They meet once a month. You got to meet local. You got to prep local. You got to have a community. And that's what we help facilitate. I also want to let you know that I am the CEO of Sun Ovens International. You should buy a Sun Oven right now tonight. Just get out your credit. You should buy one for each of your neighbors as well. They're one of the best products. It's been made for 30 years. It saves lives all over the world. People, they don't, I don't know if you know, but a third of the world still cooks with wood. It cooks just like your oven. You can dehydrate. It's amazing. There's a coupon there, $70 off. Get an oven. That's all I got to say. You need one. Oh, by the way, you can cook in the Antarctic or anywhere. As long as the sun is out, it cooks. Doesn't matter what the temperature is. Everybody always asks that. Okay, I also do a very unbelievable, highly, incredibly popular podcast. So I gave some numbers out last night, and I actually underestimated the numbers that we've had. I don't know how this compares with other podcasts. And, a lot of people don't share the numbers, but last month and this month, we've had over 57,000 people download our podcast. And we just started back in January. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I have no idea. But by the end of the day, I'm hoping that we actually hit the 60,000. That would be, I'm stoked. So anyway, we get email like crazy. It's called the Prepping Academy. Myself and a guy named Kyle that I killed, and then I brought him back. So if you've ever listened to, we've done over 100 podcasts, and then Tenderfoot every now and then we'll make a showing. So anyway, you can find that at all the different places. I do want to mention our schedule. So far on the lineup, we've had Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy and Charlie Hogwood. We've had, last night, we had Survival Mom and Jonathan Hollerman. Tonight, we have Sam Kopler and John Jacob Schmidt. Sunday, we have Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher from Prepping 2.0. Both of them are authors, and Glenn is, if you've read that book, I think it was one of the first series I've ever read, 299 Days. And then Monday, we have Dennis and Jeff Moats. And on Tuesday, and I think Scott Hunt's in the house now from Practical Preppers, we're going to have Scott Hunt on. That is our schedule. Now, let's get right to tonight. We're going to be talking about the pandemic and how we're all going to die. And, maybe we're not all going to die. Maybe just bad people. No. So let's, I do want to say this. Anybody, has this happened to anyone? Has your family and friends all of a sudden like, hey, calling out of the, I haven't talked to you in 9 months and you're calling me, asking me what you should buy. I saw this on our Facebook page, and I can just see Forrest Gump when he says this. So he doesn't say this actual thing, but everyone stop making fun of preppers. Yes. We knew this day was coming. Some of us have lived for this day. Don't be arrogant. Even though we have the supplies, it's not all about us. We got to help others as well. So I do want to say this. I'm a Christian. Everyone, you just know it if you're around PrepperNet. God has not given us a spirit of fear. Actually, fear is not anything God gives us. Now, we should fear God, but that's more respect God than actually being afraid. But so we're not here to preach fear. We're here to educate you if we can. We're here to give some peace, kind of see what is going to happen, get some good information. The more you have in your head, the better off you can prepare, you can plan, and you can survive. And that's what we're here for. So I do want to say this. I don't have Sam's book with me. Going too fast. Sorry. I wrote a book, very thin. You can read it in absolutely no time at all. And it's on the case for Christian preparedness. And what I do is I take Bible stories, because a lot of my friends said, you know what, I'm going to just trust God. And I'm like, okay, but you got to obey God as well. And this book takes you through several stories in the Bible, I don't know, 15 or so, about people that trust God, but they didn't obey. And the outcome's different than you think sometimes. But anyway, this thing is free on Amazon Kindle download this weekend only. It's absolutely free. You don't get the paper version. It's the electronic version, but it's free. Did I say free? Free. Go download it. In the categories, in the free categories, it's number one right now. But I guess if you give it away, you can get up to number one. But get it. Now, if you want to give it to a friend or people at church or someone like that, buy the copy. It's cheap. If you think I make money on this, you're crazy, but it's cheap. You give it to them, and it goes through the reasons why the Bible tells you need to prep. And the last chapters is it's really the Roman road to salvation kind of thing. So you can use it as a witnessing tool as well. So anyway, enough about that. So let's the next thing is I want to introduce my two guests. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about them and the amazing people they are. And then I'm going to have them come on and they're going to tell you how amazing they are. Well, maybe. So John Jacob Schmidt, he runs AMRON. AMRON is a national emergency communication network. He's the founder and national director. He's a former DOD contractor, and we all know that DOD contractors kind of scare you sometimes. He was in a desert. He's a Desert Storm veteran, a radio operator with the 5th and 3rd Special Forces Group, and he does an incredible podcast. I would say that his is one podcast I never miss. There's a lot of podcasts I just can't listen to in the prep. I just can't. I probably can't even listen to my own. But anyway, he's an amazing guy. We're going to bring him up in just a second. I also want to introduce to you Samuel J. Kopler from Forward Observer. He's a former intelligence NCO, that stands for non-commissioned officer, and intelligent coordinator. He's an author of SHTF Intelligence, and I have that book, and I didn't bring it in here. And also he does a early warning, which is a daily email, and he does a podcast as well. I think that podcast is daily as well. That's Sam on the right as you're looking at the photo. No, okay, no, maybe not. Maybe Sam's the guy on the left there. So, but with that said, I do want to bring in both Sam and John Jacobs. Are you guys there?
I'm here.
John Jacobs has his microphone muted. There he goes. Okay, Sam, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Forrest. How about yourself?
Doing great. Mr. John Jacobs, you there?
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks for having us. This is just a great opportunity. Much appreciated.
Awesome. So let's start with John Jacob first, since I started with John Jacob first, since I started with him first. Hey, if you don't mind, just take about 45 minutes and tell us about yourself.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
Time. No, this is really great. This is a great venue and a great platform, and I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. So yeah, this is good stuff. I started Radio Free Redoubt, the podcast, which is now a weekly radio show and a podcast, back in 2011. So we're coming up on our 9-year anniversary in June. It'll be 9 years, and it started as, and it still is, essentially a conservative political strategic relocation or migration movement, calling for conservative patriots that see what's going on in the world, prepper-minded folks, self-reliant citizens who see what's going on, and now, while you can, taking the initiative and getting strategically relocated out of what we call occupied territory, where local government and state government policies are becoming more hostile toward our traditional values and things that we cherish. Moving to a more rural lifestyle, getting away from these heavily Marxist influenced areas. So we call that the American Redoubt. That was a term that was coined by the author James Rawls over there at Survival Blog. And he's the author of the first prepper novel that I ever read, the Patriots, a novel of the coming collapse. That got me started on my journey toward really, I guess, being more deliberate about prepping. And it was his article about a call to the American Redoubt, is what he called it. That's what started Radio Free Redoubt in this journey. And I wanted it to be somewhat of a like a Radio Free Europe, broadcasting across the wire into the occupied zones as a message of hope, to those, in behind the Iron Curtain. And so that's kind of the flavor of Radio Free Redoubt and the inspiration for it. But really, there are people that now, and have been for several years, strategically relocating into multiple different conservative areas.
Did we lose you?
I'm here.
Okay, you're there. You keep going.
Oh, okay. So what happened was about probably just a few months into this, is something that had been in the back of my mind, is realizing that patriots don't really have a standardized communications plan for reaching out to each other, coordinating with each other in the event of a major catastrophic disaster. And so, originally intended to help keep the American Redoubt connected, we started getting radio operators from outside the American Redoubt asking to join, because there's really no other standardized communications plan at that time for patriots, preppers, and the like. And so it quickly grew into now it's international. We've got Amron operators in every state, and South Africa, Australia, England, just all over the place, Puerto Rico, and Canada. So back in 2011, 2012, I started a program called the CH3 Project, the unlicensed radios of FRS, MERS, CB radios, as just a standardized plan to turn to channel 3 to try to reach out to others in an emergency. And of course, the extremely limited nature of those radios and those bands, it created the impetus for going to larger capabilities, and that led us into the amateur radio, which is the real heavy lifter in Amron now, so that we can be a interstate, a national, or even intercontinental radio communications network. So it's really grown and it's been really exciting to be part of this journey. But I was a radio operator in the Army as a young man, and had left that behind as just something that I used to do when I was in the Army. It came full circle to really the calling in my life, and this is what I do for a living now, is organizing and facilitating this nationwide emergency communications network. And over the years, we have responded to real world disasters, hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and more. So it's just been very rewarding, very exciting, and quite a journey. And the most you talked about the need for tribe to build frith with other groups in your community. You have to be able to have other people to rely on, that networking, and it really is extremely critical. And this network, AMRON, the American Redoubt Radio Operators Network, has brought forward the most incredible, selfless, hardworking patriots that are so invested in what they do, to be a voice, to be there in an emergency, to be able to keep communities connected and coordinating in response to disasters, in training and in real world, has just been an amazing thing to see unfold. And I can't tell you the caliber of people, not even, I think probably even more so than what I found in the military. A strong sense of brotherhood, strong sense of dedication, because it's not a job, it's a cause for these folks. And so that's kind of brought us to where we are now. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that I can, and especially in context of the coronavirus, which is the kind of the main subject, the topic here. It's kind of difficult. We're not really dealing with an emergency communications or grid down type of environment, really, with the coronavirus. So our job is just to train, become as proficient as possible, and have increase our capabilities. So it doesn't matter what the emergency is. If conventional communications go down, then we're prepared to to fill that need.
Awesome. Let's get to Sam. You get 25 seconds now. No, Sam, tell us about yourself a little bit, about your background in the military, and a little bit what Forward Observer is about.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, first, I'm glad to be here. It's good to be on with John Jacob as well. We've worked pretty closely at times through emergencies like hurricanes and stuff. If we have time for it, I'd like to tell a story about what AMRON and our Fox company team did a couple of years ago. I'm Sam. I was an intelligence analyst. I spent 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now I run Forward Observer. And I'm essentially doing the same job I did in the Army, which is looking through data, looking through reporting, and identifying trends and identifying patterns, and really identifying risk. Because ultimately, what intelligence does is it reduces uncertainty about the future. And there's a lot of uncertainty about coronavirus, and a lot of uncertainty about EMPs, war with Russia, economic disruption, all these things that, no one knows the future. There's a lot of uncertainty, but I can't tell the future. I don't even try. I don't even make predictions, except that I did make one prediction yesterday, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. However, what we can do is we can look at indicators, and indicators are clues, and it's like putting together a piece of a puzzle. Once we start putting enough pieces of the puzzle together, then we can produce intelligence. We can reduce our uncertainty about the future. We can really begin to prepare for much more likely events. And I think I've gone over 20 seconds, but my website's forwardobserver.com, and I yield the balance of my time back to Forrest.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, someone's calling you a goat. I don't understand why Natty would call you a goat. Is that an acronym? I don't know, but anyway.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know what it is. So, but yes. So tonight, guys, it's a little different. We're not going to be talking about, getting your little alcohol and putting it on your hands. We're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about intelligence. We're going to talk about the financial impact that this is going to have, and we're going to talk about gathering intel and with Amron's communication and their network and some of the things they're doing. So this is we just we went a couple notches deeper than we have been, and that's because you are progressing very well in the class. I make all this up as I go, but to start out, Sam, since you're right there and ready, your overall big thought on the virus, just high level, where do you think this is going? What do you think is going to become of it?
Well, first, I think the world has seen worse. This is certainly significant for our lifetimes. According to expert pathologists and epidemiologists, they say something much worse is, it's not a matter of if, but of when. I think coronavirus is going to bring a lot of economic disruption. How much, I kind of tend to think of ranges here from, best case scenario to worst case scenario and everything in between. And I don't think it's going to be the worst case scenario, but I do think a lot of this really depends on kind of the if transmission accelerates, okay, if the velocity of the spread accelerates, then obviously the more volume and the more sustained these outbreaks are, the worse things are going to get. But I don't think we're going to get to the point of economic collapse. But certainly some towns, some regions, by everything, if what the CDC says is true, I mean, we can certainly see some towns and regions having some very severe disruption, according to what CDC is saying.
Okay, Mr. Jacobs, what do you have a different view or different take than Sam? What do you think the end results, or are we going to have 160 million people die, which is Dr. Hatfield thinks that 160 million people will die. Dr. Hatfield is the gentleman that used to run the Army lab for the United States. He's backed down off that a little bit now, but what do you think?
Well, I think that I always want to put the brakes on when the alarmists come out, because they're since a month ago, we've had usually the same players. They come on with a secret insider government contact that told them that next week FEMA is going to be, confiscating food and rounding people up, and then you got other people saying this is just a flu. There's nothing to it, and I always think that the truth is somewhere in between, and so I'm not the alarmist. Matter of fact, there's some folks that thought I should be taking a more I don't want to say an alarmist approach to this, but that maybe I'm not putting enough weight on the seriousness of it. But that's not entirely true. I just saw a video that we actually posted that showed that the coronavirus is alarming in how rapid it is spreading in comparison to other similar pandemics that we've had in the last several years. SARS, the swine flu, the bird flu, Ebola, and but it is still far short of where we were with the swine flu. Personally, my estimation, and not being a virologist, not being a medical professional, but just looking at the pattern of previous epidemics and where this one is going, I think that this is going to play itself out in the coming weeks and months. I do think, and there was just already one death in Washington State already. The governor reportedly is calling for a state of emergency, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, because we're losing was it last year or 2018? I think we lost 80,000 people in the United States alone died from the seasonal flu. 80,000 people. That's a tremendous amount of people. But that video that I posted is actually only about a minute of a 10-minute video. If you watch the whole 10-minute video, it puts everything in perspective, especially in relation to the number of people that we lose, fatalities to heart attacks, cancer, car accidents, suicide, attacks by dogs, outnumber the deaths of people, from these flus and these viruses. So I think it is something that we should not take lightly, but I do not think that this is something that warrants the overreaction of people. People are freaking out over getting the last N95 mask. When once they get them, they're going out into public, they're not wearing them. I don't know why. Maybe it's a collector item, for coronavirus. I don't. The motive is, except it creates a false sense of security. They've got their N95 mask, but they're not practicing other commonly known preventative measures, and they're going on about their lives anyway. So the things that they're doing to make them feel better about the situation isn't really going to help them anyway, and probably God, because this is not something that is result, in my estimation, of 190 million people dead from this. As a Christian, I think that the biggest problem people have, and this is what I said on my show a couple of weeks ago, if you believe that millions and millions of people are going to die, they need Jesus. So what are you doing about that? Their salvation is on the line. You ministering to people, you just counting your cans of beans, figuring out how you're going to try to survive this. So the bigger problem, I think, is people's salvation more than getting sick, because none of us, you said, we're all going to die. None of us are getting out of this alive. It's going to be heart attacks, cancer, viruses. Some people are going to die from the flu and complications from that. None of us are getting out of this alive. So my bigger concern is the panicked reaction of the civilian populace, and even more than that are the potential control measures that governments will put into place. I just saw an article headlined about the European nations are putting plans in place to respond to this coronavirus epidemic. Of course, it's kind of laughable. I don't think they're putting a plan in place. I think they're crossing T's and dotting I's on a plan they probably already had for years, and they're just bringing it up to speed to fit this situation. So we have a growing tyranny across the country, around the world, and these folks will not let any opportunity go to waste to grab power, to seize power. And seeing what's happened in China, Iran, and even Italy now, they're stopping transportation of all trains going from northern Italy into Austria. I think those are the real things that will cause direct disruptions to us. Travel, the disruptions of supply lines. And for that reason, I think we need to be self-reliant. We need to make sure we have everything that we need, which we should be doing anyway. Mm-hmm. The things that we should be doing, we should have already done years ago for those of us that are preparedness minded and striving towards self-reliance.
Yep.
To you.
So let me tell you, my son just came in this weekend, unannounced, which is, we love, but he is going to Europe next weekend. You guys may think I'm crazy, but in England, he's going to go into England. London, he's going to go to France, and he's going to go, do some touring. I'm actually okay with that. He's going to be fine. I did give him some masks and, told him about the goggles and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he knows how to do this, but I don't think it's at this point that we should shut down our lives. I actually know two families that have already bugged out. They've literally taken their kids out of school and they're doing homeschool, and they've, in a sense, one's bugged in and the other one's bugged out. And I think it's a little too soon to even start thinking about this kind of stuff. So my son's going to go. I'm perfectly happy. I think he's going to be safe. And if you look at the statistics, now that we're getting real numbers out of China, well, one of the things they were saying, it attacks men, because like 70% of the people that have died were men, but that you have to look at the society there. But one thing we are learning, the younger you are, meaning 20s and below, there's been very few deaths 20s and below, like kids, right. The germ factory kids. I love them, but
hey, Forrest.
Yes, go ahead.
60% of Chinese males are smokers. Okay, that's why a majority of men are dying, because they already have compromised immune systems.
Yeah, and they go out more than the women do in China.
And not only that, through their forced abortion policies, they don't have very many women over there, because they killed them all off in abortions because they wanted to raise a 3 billion man army.
Yep.
And so it's just their own system is caving in on themselves.
Yeah, there's about 1.2 or 1.3 males for every female in China.
Yep. So you can see I am not very worried. I don't think that our experts, two of the best preparedness experts in the industry are on tonight, by the way, guys. Sam and also John Jacobs. So let's get in a little bit more the details, if you don't mind. So Sam, I know you write a lot with your briefings that you do on a weekly basis or a daily basis. Tell us what you've got some ins that other people don't. Kind of the behind the scenes of government preparation of what they're doing right now for America. If you got any good intel, insider information, we can tell. This is just a secret between all of us, okay?
Sure, yeah. There was I obviously don't know what was said, but there was a top secret briefing for the Senate this week from the CDC, DHS, National Institute for Health, some other organizations. And I read some of the reactions from the senators who attended that meeting, and I thought one of the best was Senator Mike Braun, a Republican from Indiana. And he said that, that according to what he saw, according to that capabilities brief and what they're preparing for, that the United States is as prepared as any country in the world. So, I do think that those health experts, I think they're staying on top of it. President Trump has said repeatedly that, hey, these guys are the best in the world, and they're on it. So they are facing some challenges. But I should point out, too, that Senator Braun, did kind of warn that, hey, this thing could get much, much worse. And I also thought it was interesting, Mick Mulvaney, the acting White House acting chief of staff this week, said to the effect, are we going to see some schools close? Yeah, probably. Are we going to see some disruption to to public transportation? Yeah, probably. So I think they're acutely aware of just how bad things can get. And really at this point, it just seems like they're crossing their fingers, hoping it doesn't get much, much worse.
Okay. So, John, your specialty is comms. How do you see Amron and comms playing a part of a pandemic in America?
Well,
I know that's a big old question there. I know.
Well, you know what? People we do a lot of scenario-based training exercises. A couple of years ago, we actually did one called Rabid Rudolph, which was a hypothetical scenario-based training exercise where there was a virus similar to this, or Ebola type of virus. We made it up for the scenario that jumped to humans, and it was transferable to humans. And it had a very high death rate, and it was a very prolific disease. So people stopped showing up for work. People stopped maintaining their telecommunication system, or power grid started to black out, resulted in looting, riots. But this was a made up scenario. And because really it doesn't matter, we could make it aliens, zombies, economic collapse. The point is that you need to be able to pass traffic over the radio to get information and to inform others and to coordinate with each other in an emergency. So you're ready to operate if you lose conventional communications, regardless of what the emergency is. Okay, now that was an extreme case. The Operation Rabid Rudolph was a virus epidemic, pandemic type of a scenario for the sake of pulling the grid down so we could practice with radios. But if this is as bad as some people are saying, we could go to the absolute worst case location and look at China. In February, I think it was 14th or 13th, they had the highest rate of deaths. It was like I want to say 108 in one day. I can't remember what it was, but the bottom line is they've gotten punched in the gut the hardest. And you see streets that are empty. You see shopping centers completely vacant. Manufacturing was shut down for a time, but they didn't lose their power grid. They didn't lose conventional communications. And I think that's a pretty good telltale sign of what we can expect around the rest of the world if we stay on the same trajectory of this virus spreading like we've seen in other parts of the world, especially where it was hit the hardest in China. So I don't expect emergency communications really to be needed so much from the sense of telecommunications going down because of this virus. But I do see communications coming into play, especially if we find ourselves in a quarantine type of situation. Now, what we did see in China was a mass quarantine, self-quarantine, where there's curfews put in place, you cannot travel, and people were basically confined to their homes and their small villas. And so if you find yourself in a quarantine situation, especially if you're self-quarantining, you want to create a protective barrier around your family so that other infected people can't come in and place your family in harm's way. So communications, I would say, make that part of your plan. You can buy the cheap little Baofeng radios now for like $10 with the, without the keypad on the front. Program it up, leave it at the end of the driveway with a little note saying, if you need to contact us, turn this on, and just be monitoring it. Or now they have wireless intercom systems that you can get with video even that are, battery powered or solar powered, that you can have at the end of the driveway or at your gate, where somebody needs to contact you and say, hey, I'm your neighbor, I need to borrow a cup of sugar. Say, okay, great, step away, and we'll bring a cup of sugar out in 5 minutes and leave it for you there. And so I could see communications coming into play in that sense, but that's more your tactical level, that's not really operational or strategic level communications in this particular disaster, if you want to call it that.
Gotcha. Okay. Sam, going to jump over. You like I said, you in your report, you talk about, you sent out a email the other day about the economic impact possibly. So my question to you is, how do you see the economic or the financial impact of this virus in America? We've seen it in our markets, but how is it going to impact the United States?
Well, let me start with how it's. Well, obviously, I think the economy is going to slow down somewhat this quarter. China really has about 4 months. The big piece of the puzzle is really what China does. They got about 4 months to start producing stuff again, but we're going to see supply shocks here in the United States. And we look at their coal consumption, and that is rising a little bit. It's really tough to find data about their factories and manufacturing if they're getting back up, off the ground, but they are way down. I mean, basically the entire country virtually shut down for the Lunar New Year, and then you had this COVID-19 outbreak. So it's been really, really tough going. I think that the economic effects, depending on how bad they are in China, are going to ripple into the United States. A lot of people are talking about this V-shaped recovery that China is going to have economically. So if you think about a V, they go down very steep, and then they get all their factories and workers back online, and then they have this very steep recovery. And several financial analysts, I would even not even financial analysts, they're asset managers. They control hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in their funds, and they say, well, it's probably not going to happen like that. There's not going to be that fast recovery. So here stateside, we're going to catch that a little bit. Will there be? Really, the short answer to the question is it depends how many people get COVID-19 here, how badly that taxes our healthcare infrastructure. If they have to start shutting down schools and businesses, or Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, said, hey, it's inevitable that someone in New York City catches COVID-19. Well, if they start shutting that down, if it affects the financial sector, if it affects some very important places here in the United States, then we will have an economic, I would say probably a hiccup economically. Could this push us to recession? Absolutely, it absolutely could. We're already seeing, if you look at current indicators, from January, we're not seeing a whole lot, but all of a sudden you start looking at leading indicators, especially the 6-month indicators, and we are seeing some signs of economic slowing. And I think that's one reason why the Trump administration is very adamant about not causing panic, because a lot of this stuff's psychological, right? You think you're going to have some national emergency, you stop spending, your life is disrupted, the volume of economic or financial transactions in your country decreases, then you get an economic slowdown. So I'm kind of with John Jacob on this. I think it certainly won't be the best case. It certainly won't be the worst case. It'll be somewhere in the middle. But I definitely foresee a slowing of the economy over the next couple of quarters.
Well, I agree. I see the biggest problem is not going to be the deaths from the actual virus. It's going to be people having to stay home, and their life is kind of put on hold. Kids might not go to school in a certain district because a few kids get it, which means you either have to have a babysitter or a sitter, or someone to stay home with the kids. So it's going to be, I think it could be more of an inconvenience than it will be, just people dying in hospitals everywhere. I just don't see that happening in America. Our healthcare system, it's pretty good. Was it John Hopkins that said we're the best in the nation and in the world, but yet CDC said we're not ready for a pandemic as well. So it's going to be interesting. One of the things points I made last night was, if you're in a job right now and there is a possibility where you can telecommute, start talking to your boss right now, because if you don't go into the work, you probably won't get paid. If you can work something out with your employer saying, hey, don't know where this is going, but I need to be able to get to my corporate email, this, and this. Can we go ahead and set that up now? Need a VPN. And in case you do have to work from home, you could possibly get paid. I would challenge people to go start doing this and working with their boss so that you could do telecommuting. There's a girl, I'll just call her, a lot of my friends know her. We call her V. And that's all I'll say. And she's in China. And she bunkered down for probably 30 days within her apartment. And she worked as normal from her apartment. She has a little bit more flexibility and freedom to go out now, but she had the ability, kept getting paid, no really change in her life because she had that set up where she could work from home. And V is doing very well, by the way. So that's good. That's good news. So,
Forrest, could I jump just briefly on this healthcare thing?
Yeah.
Look, we have some of the best doctors, nurses, and healthcare staff in the entire world. The problem is that the hospitals, they don't face pandemics very often, and by and large, they're not prepared for them. The Department of Health and Human Services said the other day, look, we have 30 million N95 masks. We're going to need 300 million. So it's not really, it's not due to lack of training or unprofessionalism. It's just lack of resources. They don't respond to this stuff. Typically, they're not prepared for it. So depending on how many people start to catch this stuff, they say 20% of these cases are severe, which is much higher than the flu. So yeah, it absolutely could tax the healthcare system, especially if you. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So, Mr. Jacobs, you're big in the political scene in America, especially in your home state. How do you see this playing out for the Republicans, Democrats, the election? The conspiracy theories that we're hearing, it's crazy. And how is your own state government handling this as well?
Well, I'm involved in, quite a bit across the American redoubt. I've touched, rubbed shoulders with legislators in Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. And right now, actually, they're starting to put letters out to consider, remote office work. And so what you were just talking about, even the, state level and local governments are talking about that. As much as people can do from home without having, if you don't have to interact with the public and it's something that you can do, it's not something sensitive that, you can do work from home, that they're encouraging people to do that already. So that's kind of interesting. But to the other subject, as far as, how this could play out politically, I was wondering after the Russian collusion thing fell flat on its face, and then the fake impeachment freak show. After that fell on its face, I was thinking, what are they going to pull next? I mean, what do they have now? And sure enough, it's President Trump isn't doing enough. He's incompetent. He's not adequately responding to this, and so basically this is going to be Trump's fault. They're going to definitely try to capitalize on this, and the blame game is already starting. Democrat policies and the Republicans, closing the borders, and that's racist. And so they're definitely trying to politicize this. It is a campaign year, and they're going to take every opportunity they can to try to paint the other side as inadequate to respond to the challenges that we face. But I think that's just par for the course. I mean, it's predictable, it's expected, and I'm distrustful of the government, from the federal down to the state and even local politics as well. And that is not a conspiracy theory, anti-government type of sentiment that I just grew all on my own. They earned it. And, they have a long-standing reputation of being deceitful and being deceptive, acting outside the law and acting unlawfully. And we see it over and over, and they never seem to be held accountable. I've always been a longtime admirer of the FBI, but it's been a double-edged sword because all I see them as the highest level of professionals. But I also see them as like some of the worst corruption is happening inside the FBI. This white, and they're not holding them accountable, and it's just frustrating to no end. So I don't trust them. I don't trust a communist country with official numbers, and I'm skeptical of our own country with their official numbers. Although after watching President Trump's presentation earlier with the CDC and the organization, I can't recall the organization. These
CPAC.
guys went around. Pardon?
It was CPAC, I think, wasn't it?
No, not CPAC. That's the
Okay, sorry.
Republican Party. But anyway, these guys have been around since the Reagan Republican or the Reagan administration, involved. For the most part, they're apolitical. They're completely involved in what they're doing with the CDC. I think they're patriots. I think they really trying to it's their contribution to mankind. But there's also some shenanigans that go on in that world as well. with weaponized biological weaponization programs and research and things like that. And there's a lot of evidence pointing to this being a weaponized virus produced out of Canada, smuggled out of Canada by Chinese spies, essentially, this virus ends up missing out of a lab in Canada. It mysteriously shows up in the same town where they have the largest level 4 biological warfare research facility in China. And so I'm just really, this is what it comes down to. Sometimes you can't know who to trust or what to trust, except those people that you build with, the people that your own tribe, the people that you've been in the dirt with, the people that have proven themselves over time. And those are the people that at the end of the day, you trust them and the Lord, and to heck with everyone else.
Yep. So I saw on CNN today that they think actually Trump was working with Russia through Ukraine, and he created the virus. Can you believe that?
I knew it.
And that's just amazing how they did all that research and they found that out. So I'm just kidding on that.
The only thing plausible about that is he's actually probably smart enough to do it.
Right. Yes. Hey, that was his deal with China. We just didn't know he was going to go in and, destroy their economy, then sign the next, trade agreement. So he's so smart. We didn't know that. So, Sam, you mentioned the R word. I can't mention that, but you mentioned it. Do you see, what are the chances of the R word happening to America?
Yeah, that's a good question. Recession. Well, I think the economy, I'm looking through these comments and everyone's like, oh, don't trust the government. Yeah, I agree. The way the government calculates a lot of these numbers is really kind of backwards. But as long as they're calculating these numbers in the same way, we can establish kind of a track record, right? I mean, we have an archive of this data, and what we see is the economy works in cycles, right? So there's credit cycle and business cycle and all this stuff, and we are in the late cycle right now. So typically, what happens is you have this economic acceleration because interest rates are low and people are borrowing money, or companies are borrowing money. They're hiring people. They're making capital expenditures. They're trying to ramp up their business because it's really cheap to borrow. And then you start to get inflation, and the Federal Reserve jacks up interest rates. And then these economic transactions begin to decline by volume, and you get an economic slowdown. And then eventually, you get a recession. Things kind of resettle, and then this cycle starts again. So we are late cycle, and I think the Trump administration has done a very good job, especially Larry Kudlow, in trying to lengthen this as long as possible. But look, this is going to stop at some point in time. And right now, I mean, look, Trump got at least phase 1 of the U.S.-China trade deal done. It was interesting that China waited to really respond to the coronavirus outbreak until Trump had signed that phase 1 of the U.S.-China trade deal. I thought that was interesting. Really, I think, coronavirus right now is probably the greatest economic threat, and I'm not sure. It's really too early to tell. Look, nobody can tell you that we are going to have a recession, but it certainly threatens recession. And so current indicators look good. Let's see how they look in another month. But I can tell you that looking for patterns, okay, there are 4 very, very solid indicators of coming recession. And we're seeing 3 of the 4 right now. So the first is labor differential. It's put out by the conference board. And if you look at that chart, I wish I could show you the charts, but if you look at the chart, okay, it looks like this. It goes up and down. It's cyclical. And we are at we peaked. We've been peaking for the past couple of quarters. And so we're on the tail end of that. So that's number one. That has been a very solid indicator of the last 3 recessions, 1990, 2001, and 2008. The next is the Employment Trends Index, which is also cyclical. We go back 1990, 2001, 2010. I'll spare you the gory details, but basically, once the employment reaches a peak, wages come up, and then that's the second indicator. The third indicator is the Leading Economic Index, the LEI. And currently, for January 2020, that's the latest data we have, everything looks good. The problem is you look at the 6-month forward indicators for LEI, and that's projecting 0 or negative economic growth in the next 6 months, which is another leading indicator. 1990, actually, that data goes all the way back to 1974. It's been a perfect indicator, leading indicator of recession. The fourth thing is really going to be the last domino to fall, and that's consumer confidence. Consumer confidence is great, and we'll see what coronavirus does to consumer confidence. But if that starts to drop and we start to see, Americans spending less money, saving more money, then we could be in a recession later this year or early next year. And I think there's a very good chance of that on its own.
Right.
I don't want to say it's a near certainty, but I feel very strongly about that if coronavirus gets as bad as the CDC is saying that it could.
Okay, I'm going to go old school, and if you guys are really interested in the market, I want to challenge you to do. History repeats itself in the market, and so go back 100 years in the market, and this isn't 100% true, meaning it's 70% of the time in the market. I'm going to show you. I've studied the market a little bit, so I'm going to show you this. And I'm going to just I just found 2 dates. This is a decade. I know you can't see that very well of the market. Whoa, right there. I'm holding my other hand. You can't really see that. But look what happens every single decade. In the year 0, it resets. This is 1930. Now I'm going to fast forward. It's interesting. It always works, kind of thing. In 60, there was another correction. A lot of the corrections happen in 7s and 0s. You might go, "Oh, that's baloney." Look at the charts. It works that way. Why it works that way is because history repeats itself. Again, I don't know. You can take that or leave it. I've studied the markets, the history. So anyway, Mr. Jacobs, this question just came up to me. So China has this firewall where we can't get all the information. They limit a lot of it. Some of the people can get through and get the information out. But again, this is unplanned and unscripted. Is there a way that ham radio operators are getting any information that we're not getting through the media or through the internet, possibly? I'm just throwing that out there.
No, there's not. In fact, that actually came up in a discussion among Amaron Core, which is our, your more dedicated, committed, usually skilled and experienced operators, who are, have actually gone out on the airwaves looking for operators from China. And the only contacts I'm aware of are like Hong Kong. It's a ham operator in essentially an otherwise unaffected area. He's just making contacts, talking about the weather, have a nice day type of thing. It's not very often that we do, and there are extraordinary cases, and there are extraordinary circumstances, and it's a pretty amazing thing to actually encounter when you encounter other ham operators in other countries that are going through some type of disaster scenario. But rarely do we see it. In Venezuela last year or the year before, when they were going through all of essentially these rolling blackouts, they had massive nationwide blackouts, and almost the entire country was hurled into the darkness. We had operators continuously scanning for Venezuela stations, and there was only one or two that were just beaconing, and that was it. So I don't know. Maybe they're dealing with their own emergency. They don't think to take the airwaves or anything like that. But no, nobody that I'm aware of has used amateur radio to try to get the truth or news out through that venue.
It would be interesting for people to smuggle in shortwave radios into like places like North Korea to get information in there. I wonder if they've ever done that. This is totally off the wall, but anyway.
Yeah. Yes, actually, Christian ministries have done that, and people get killed when they get caught with them, just like they did in World War II. You get caught with a shortwave transfer. Yeah, there definitely has been. The CIA has run operations over the years where they've facilitated getting radio receivers, into these areas where people can tune in and listen to the Voice of America, or other Western news and information. But I'm not sure of China. But yes, South Korea has in the past had those operations. Not the government, but ministries.
So does Amron have any plans if a pandemic happens in America, or there's a lot of people put on, we'll call it, self-containment instead of quarantine. Americans don't like the word quarantine, but self-containment or, self, whatever the easy words are. But does Amron have any kind of a plan or protocol, or does your Amron level go up or down on that?
Not specifically for a pandemic, but just for any emergency in general where conventional communications are disrupted. But we are Amron operators are on the air all the time on the digital mode HF bands. We call it persistent presence net. So pretty much any given time of day or night, you could reach out. We do have regularly scheduled nets. Matter of fact, this coming week are net weeks. On the first and the third week of the month, we have national nets where we put out the AIB, which is an Amron intelligence brief, so that our operators can practice passing real world, like an aggregate, small report, a brief. And a lot of our content, the majority of our content actually comes from Forward Observer. And so we'll take those daily briefs, and I'll boil it down from a paragraph to a sentence. And we'll have, 2 or 3 or 4 bulleted items related to things that are going on in the world, as far as news or intelligence, or if it's amateur or emergency communications related, that the FCC passes a new regulation that might affect us or something like that, then we'll also include that. So those Amron intelligence briefs and other traffics being passed all the time, whether or not there's an emergency. And so that's where a lot of training and mentoring and stuff like that's taking place. And guys are passing around this information, so they're just inherently training by being on the air with each other, and building that rapport, increasing their skills. And so if there was a real world emergency that took our telecommunications grid down, we are already on the air. It is not something that needs to be done or put in place. It's already something that's in place, and you just basically switch in your brain, from training to a real world emergency situation.
So Sam, I would probably get hit at the next convention if I don't ask you about an area study. So is this a good time to maybe do an area study, or is it the best time to do an area study of what is around you, who's around you? Yeah,
absolutely. Anytime is good to do an area study. I would say the sooner the better. Information is often overlooked as a part of preparedness, because buying things and acquiring things makes us feel safe, right? I think as John Jacob earlier, before we went on, said, "Oh, people are going to buy all this stuff because it makes them feel safe." Well, really, in addition to acquiring stuff that's going to help us survive, here's the main difference. Okay, you have survival, Okay, you can't eat intelligence. You have to have food and water. Intelligence increases your survivability, and along with communications. And really for us, as an intel guy, I'm not keying up. I'm listening. And so intelligence helps us reduce uncertainty about the future. So, by doing an area study, I think every prepper ought to do an area study. Start looking around for all the things around us that are going to break, for potential fault lines, vulnerabilities, and once we can identify those, then we can begin to anticipate what could happen in the future. And then you go from, hey, I'm going to prepare for an EMP, or I'm going to prepare for a pandemic, and I don't really know exactly what I'm preparing for except this threat on the national level. Then we can really start to get granular and say, hey, in 12 hours in my neighborhood, we're going to start seeing these problems because of X, Y, and Z, right? We're looking for local vulnerabilities, local fault lines. And so, really for a pandemic, let's start looking for medical personnel who live near us. Where if there is a COVID-19 outbreak, what local hospital? Do you even have a medical facility that's that's capable of doing those things? Another thing is looking for. And I lost my train of thought, but so we're looking for medical personnel, medical facilities. One of the things that we're seeing in China right now is that if you're in the hospital for cancer or a broken arm, you're just screwed, because all medical personnel are taking care of COVID-19 patients. Mm-hmm. So, for you seeking alternative medical help, maybe a physician, a doctor, a nurse who can help you while your local medical facilities are stacked floor to ceiling with COVID-19 patients, or with Ebola, or whatever pandemic. So we can look at national level events. We can start looking at second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth and so on order effects, and then get a very good picture of what our local situation is going to be like, and then be very specific about what we're preparing for, instead of just saying, hey, I'm preparing for an EMP. Well, what are the effects of the EMP? That's what the area study allows us to answer.
Yes. So a lot of people in your organization, I'm not slamming them, and a lot of people in JJS's organization, they don't like social media. And I understand that because of OPSEC, but you got to, I tell people to do an area study. Sometimes it's easier with social media. You can go out right now, and I can look at some of my neighbors and see, one neighbor said, looking for N95 mask, and put a photo of a shelf, and it was gone. I'm like, okay, the guy's starting to think like a prepper. And you could help build your area study with some of the people around you in what they're saying and what they're doing. I've been a big fan of using Facebook as a spying tool. The government would have paid $10 trillion to have this in the 80s, and now they have it for free. But we could utilize a lot of that information as well. So, Mr. Jacobs, so you're not only a comms guy, you're a preparedness guy, you're in the politics, but what would you tell people? Should we all go out to Costco tomorrow and buy every bag of rice and chicken bouillon that we can buy? Is that what we should do? I mean, we can't sit here and say, guys, just chill out, don't go panic buy. There's got to be some in between there. What would you say about that?
Well, my question is, why do you not have that already? I mean, the Ebola scare, had every prepper that I knew running out buying N95 masks. Now, what they do? Burn them, use them, or maybe there's a whole new wave of people that are waking up to the preparedness world that haven't, or maybe you've got a box of them. Maybe you have 12 of them, and you thought wouldn't hurt to have 24. So, somebody said in one of our closed chats that we have, panic first before everyone else. And, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, not to really imply that, we're saying to panic. But when you do that stuff that other people are doing out of panic, while things are situation normal, you can shop for good deals. You're not going to find the Amazon N95 mask for $380 for a 3-pack of them. So that idea of panic first before everyone else does, really what it means is when you think far enough ahead, you don't have to panic. There's already store shelves that are being wiped out in Europe. I'm receiving reports from all over, from the whole network. We're talking thousands of people. And so I'm in a unique position being in the hub of all these spokes of information. And people are reporting in that the local LDS, the Latter-day Saints, the Mormon food banks, they are wiped out in a lot of these cities already. And people are in panic mode while there's food available at Walmart or Costco or wherever. If you don't have the stuff, yes, get it. But there's no reason to panic buy at this point. If you don't have an N95 mask, fine, move on without it. That's not something you need to be spending a whole ton of money on anyway. So, but as far as social media goes and that type of communications, I just wanted to back up a little bit on that. That is a giant intelligence gathering tool that's used for mapping the human terrain, and it is something the Stasi would have just I don't want to be crude. They would have had dreams over having that kind of stuff when they when they were in place. Even the United States or any world government to have the social media tools that they have there, I think they're an excellent source for intelligence. I think you should be fed from it. I don't think you should feed it. And,
hey, John, could you speak up just a little bit? People are saying they're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Right. Okay. Yeah. My sound check earlier said awesomeness, but not now, huh? How's that?
Now you sound great now. Yeah. And you look great.
Oh, thanks. I got a face for radio. See my radio face?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There you go. All right. So on that note, though, look, we're an emergency radio communications network, and what I started to go into earlier is saying that we have a persistent presence net. We're on the air all the time. So if an emergency happens, we're already there. There's no scrambling to get on the air. For some of our members, for a lot of them, they don't have the time. They have jobs or whatever the circumstances don't allow them to be on the air all the time. So we do have signals operating instructions, or SOI, that tells you what frequency to turn to, what mode, what time, on scheduled, regularly scheduled nets that happen periodically throughout the day. Now, SOI version 3 is the one that's been out and that is out right now. But version 4 is actually going to be released. We're done with it. I'm putting a couple of recommended changes in that, but that's going to be uploaded by midnight tomorrow night. So that has it. Our original SOI was 50 pages. This is going to be 103 pages. So we have found best practices and improved operating principles with new modes, new digital modes, new practices that have helped us improve. But we've been operating unofficially outside of our SOI. We've been producing white papers as official guidance to meet the communications mission needs, but that hasn't been reflected in our SOI. So that's going to be updated. So I want to just encourage people to check that out. Go to amaron.com. Probably Monday would be the time to look for that, and there'd be all the instructions on how to get your hands on that. And it's only $6 for the PDF. That is nothing to be able to help support us, because we're growing so much. But on the other side to that, you're talking about social media and other communications, talking to the radio operators in China. A lot of our valuable intelligence that's coming from China is coming through social media, and it is coming through encrypted texts and messaging apps and things like that, grid up communications. Now, when we first started, it was a grid down emergency communications network. And over the years, we morphed, realizing that real world situations are unfolding where there is communications infrastructure up and running and in place that we were not using. And so we were really squandering opportunities to have our hands on very rapid, accurate, and timely intelligence by not tapping into the grid up communications that's out there. And so we are communications. I kind of started steering our members away from just being a radio operator to being a communications specialist, so that when the grid's up, you're proficient with it. You know how to use encrypted apps and social media as tools for gathering information, not to feed the machine so that they can help map out your network and all your friends and family and everything, but something that that you're fed by. And also how to use anonymous and secure communications with the grid up. And that's where that's the most valuable information that we've gotten out of China, is through grid up communications, which we urge our operators to also be proficient in.
Yeah. So, absolutely. One of the things I do want to tell people, don't panic buy, but go buy food. Seriously, go buy food, go get water, go get the things you eat normally. If you don't have it, N95 masks are only for people that are out in public. If it hits in, let's say, Charlotte, my area, and there's 2,000 people that have the virus, I'm not going to be using my N95 mask. I'm not going out. Why would, you don't need to wear it in your own home. But anyway, and another thing that someone brought up last night, hey, if you're going grocery shopping during the breakout, the outbreak, go in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. Very few people shop 5:30 in the morning. They stock the shelves too. But anyway, so with that said, Sam, what do you recommend people do right now? Should they take all their money out of the market? Should they take their money out and go buy food? Should they buy 5,000 rounds of ammo? And then, what should people do right now in America?
Well, I'm not a financial advisor, so I really shouldn't answer that question. I think well, it really depends on how the United States can contain the spread of COVID-19. Number one. Number two, I've gotten several calls and text messages from friends, a couple I haven't even heard of in like a year, asking me, hey, what should we do to prepare for coronavirus? And I'm like, hey, I kind of give them the rundown, but I think it's really simple as look at what, think about the things that you consume and use on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, and I say go buy 3 to 6 months of it. I think that's a prudent thing to do. If you live on the Seattle, California, the West Coast, you're going to have an earthquake sooner or later. Okay, ice storms in the Midwest and the Northeast, and tornadoes and hurricanes in the South. So even if coronavirus, like Fred Sanford, even if it's not the big one, Elizabeth, there's still going to be things that are going to come along that could be disruptive. So really, I'm not super prepper over here. I kind of think, well, what's the most prudent thing to do? The prudent thing to do really would, be start with, 2 to 4 weeks. If your area has a high Asian population, has a lot of foreign tourists, has an international airport, you are at a higher risk, just as far as vectors go. So, if you expect that, hey, maybe my area might be in a lockdown, I think a lot of people are right. Why has San Francisco and some of these other cities, why have they gone into a state of emergency? Yeah, to get federal funds, obviously, but also to front run what, these potential outbreaks. Has anyone been to San Francisco? So, and actually San Francisco International Airport is one of the very few airports where flights from China are coming into. And if you can be asymptomatic for 7, 14, up to 24 days, you've had patients now 24 days being asymptomatic. There's no way you're going to catch that coming off a plane, especially if you caught it on a plane. So, I think that's out of just a sheer abundance of caution. So if you do live in one of those areas where you're at a higher risk, okay, if you live in, Lincoln, Nebraska somewhere, I probably wouldn't be too concerned about it. But if you do live in a high risk area, that's certainly what I'd be doing, and have done, by the way.
Yeah. So she gets some food, some water, things you normally eat. So to wind this down a little bit, I'll ask you one kind of, each of you I'm going to ask the same question to JJS actually. What do you recommend people do? I mean, do you think, I know you're comms guys, you guys have plans, but what do you recommend your friends, your neighbors, the guy that comes up to you and says, I'm going to come to your house. And that's when I remind him, that's why I have guns. I don't know. There's a part. This is the perfect question for you, JJS. We've been saving food. We've been preparing, but being Christians, we also have to help those that are in need. At what point do you stop helping them, or do you not stop helping them and then just take care of your own family? It's kind of a balance. So what do you say about that?
Well, it's kind of like an open border policy. Just throw your open borders open just to help other people at the detriment of your own people that you have an obligation to protect is an abrogation of something of a duty. That would be like bringing in a pedophile into my house to let him stay the night to help him out. I have to assess the level of threat. I have an obligation to provide for and protect my family. That means food and protection, and I take certain measures. I'm a big proponent of Christian charity. That's part of our Amron mission statement and guiding principles. But I want to empower people to be able to be self-reliant so they can help themselves, and even more than that, to help others. I have enough provisions for myself and my loved ones, but I also have the ability to share in small amounts. So, I would not be opposed to giving somebody a small bag of groceries to keep them going for 3 days so they can make it to the relief shelter and check in. It's definitely a personal choice. I believe in Christian charity, but not forced charity. That's socialism, which I'm inherently opposed to.
You're not voting for Bernie?
Right.
Sam is, I heard.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's run this train right off the tracks.
No kidding. That's what I'm talking about.
Let's get it fixed, man.
So
let's get the party started.
So do you think this is going to affect? Oh, well, good. I'm a huge Olympic fan. I love the Olympics. I look forward to the Olympics every 4 years. The Winter Olympics, almost a huge fan, but I still love it. What do you think we'll have the Olympics this summer? No?
I bet they'll be canceled. Hey, here's one thing that people also should consider. If the CDC is correct that this is going to be like a multi-month or seasonal problem, remember, since the census is coming up, it starts in April. Most households are going to receive flyers that they have to fill out. They can phone it in. They can put this stuff online. But from May to July, they're going to be canvassing homes who haven't responded to the census, going to senior citizens centers, like the old folks' homes. They're going to be going to college campuses to canvass students individually. So there is a potential for disruption to the 2020 census. And that's not even to say anything of the election in 2020. So no one knows how bad this thing is going to get, but let's just say worst case scenario, CDC says, look, schools are shutting down and we're, mass quarantines and all these other things to prevent COVID-19 outbreak. There's a lot of disruption. I think a lot of people are obviously not the panic buyers, but the people who are urging caution. I think that's definitely the prudent thing to do, but obviously the downside risk is huge.
Yes. So Sam, you mentioned as we're wrapping things up here, you wanted to talk about how Amron and Forward Observer kind of work together. You want to take a few minutes and you two both can interact and talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And actually, it was PrepperNet too. Actually, yeah. Come to think of it, yeah. Back during Hurricane Florence, we were supporting a nonprofit organization called Cajun Navy Relief, and they're a bunch of Cajuns and rednecks who have boats, and they are volunteers. They train throughout the year, and they go rescue people from floodwaters during these hurricanes. And so during Hurricane Florence in North Carolina, was it September 2018, or is that right?
2018, yes.
But yeah, so yeah, we are supporting their search and rescue operations. We provide them with real-time intelligence. So we check a number of factors. Look, they're out there. They don't have time to Google this stuff. And we also data mine social media. So if there's someone on Twitter saying, "Hey, I'm stuck on my roof, I need help," we can find that and then help, pass that along to dispatch. And by the way, there's been a lot of crossover because people who were in our Fox company teams helping doing that stuff, they're also members of Amron. They're also members of PrepperNet. Data mining social media is great when there's a grid up. But what happens is, power, cell phones shut off, and eventually those phones run out of juice. And so really our ability to monitor things in real time for those search and rescue teams began to degrade. The volume of information was diminished because of lack of power. So someone, and I'm sorry, I should probably be able to name this person or at least give them credit, but he's a ham radio operator, member of Amron, and also think PrepperNet as well in North Carolina. And he started monitoring his local police scanner and then relaying that information via ham radio. And then another ham radio operator through Amron was putting that information into our chat room, our feed of where people were copying and pasting stuff for our virtual ACE. So it really is a great opportunity for the intelligence side with Forward Observer and Fox Company, and the emergency communications with Amron and also PrepperNet, because Forrest, you're there in North Carolina, you're really pivotal in getting PrepperNet members on board with this process of hearing and seeing things and reporting that stuff back up to the ACE. So intelligence and communications really do go hand in hand. And really, I just want to thank you too for what you do, because you really improved the quality of the intelligence we could provide to those search and rescue teams in North Carolina.
JJ, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, that was just a really, that was what, there have been about 4 or 5 moments that are just like over the top, the coolest thing ever. And it makes you say, this is why we do what we do. And that was one of them. And we had, there was I think it was in Charlotte or it's a CH. There's a city that was basically completely cut off by rising flood waters during the hurricane. There was a couple that was stranded on the roof of their house, and they were able to reach a local ham operator, Amron core operator, who dispatched through our SIGSEN that was set up on the Georgia-South Carolina line and one in North Carolina, who were able to relay all of the information needed to Forward Observer to dispatch the Cajun Navy. And they actually went to that location because of that and affected the rescue of that couple off the roof of their house. And so, that's just one of the several real world examples of us being able to help people in times of need. And it's just a very rewarding thing. And that's what, without intelligence, radio operators is just a social network. Hey, buddy, good to talk to you. Hey, you too. But the reason why we exist is to pass intelligence. Well, Sam Culper has the only that I'm aware of organized intelligence process for collection and processing information and intelligence for use in the Patriot community. So if the grid goes down, though, they're done. So you've got to have radio operators that can pass that intel. So it's a symbiotic relationship. They need a way to get that information passed. The radio operators, that's their mission, is to pass that. So it's been a really great relationship, and it's one that's forever morphing, growing, and evolving. And we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. There's lots of gaps in our system, but we're always working toward it.
Yes, I agree. That's good. That's how the prepping community using intelligence, communications, and boots on the ground can work together and actually help people. And we can also all help people by spreading our knowledge. And that's one of the things we do at PrepperNet. We want these meetups so other people can meet other like-minded individuals and learn and build a relationship. And that's kind of what PrepperNet's kind of goal is. So to wrap things up, Sam, what is your final words? I tell you what, give us your final statement, and then tell us all about much more in depth of what you have going on right now at Forward Observer. I know you have classes, you have webinars, you have your brief that people can sign up for. So tell us everything that everyone needs to know about Forward Observer and what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to be on the live stream tonight, and I hope my input was helpful to people. And a lot of times myself included, it's easy to get lost in the news because it's like a pogo stick. It's just one thing after the other. It's like a dog chasing a tennis ball. It's like there's always another tennis ball. It's another day, another news cycle, another distraction. So really, what I try to do at Forward Observer is provide some context, okay, and provide a frame of reference for this new information that's coming in. I start my day generally before, no later than 5:30 in the morning, and I start combing through data that doesn't get trickled up to the newsrooms. And so, a lot of my readers can attest. You'll read stuff in this report that just doesn't get covered on, Fox News and, even a lot of the alternative news outlets. They don't even touch this stuff because they can't find it. We use machine learning and some artificial intelligence tools to help us kind of weed through that stuff. So I produce a daily intelligence brief. A lot of people call it the prepper's intelligence brief because we touch on a lot of things, especially political, social, and economic instability. So if you want to identify risk indicators, look at trends that could affect the future, ranging from really a lot of just domestic disruption. I really do think that we are currently in a low intensity conflict right now. And so I do expect political violence to get worse. So we look for indications of that as well. And I just started a daily podcast actually this week. So, a lot of people say, hey, the information in the report's great. I don't have time to read it every day. Well, now we have a podcast version for you on your drive home or during the lunch break or something like that. So it's for news junkies, people who like to get a lot of data points. I know a lot of people in here were saying, hey, how can I trust, this information? Or, how can I trust information that government puts out? We really act as a filter for that. And we provide some color to the news and really intelligence reduces uncertainty about the future. So if you have a lot of uncertainty about the future, definitely give us a shot. Members.forwardobserver.com is the link where folks can see that and sign up. And, I teach classes. There's a lot of stuff, but if you're looking for another podcast too, I do the Forward Observer Dispatch. I try to do it once or twice a week, completely free. So thanks for everyone's time tonight. Just forwardobserver.com, or you can go sign up at members.forwardobserver.com. Yes,
thank you for coming on, and you will be back for sure. JJS, tell us about Amron, what you have going on, how people can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity for us. Great job, and you're doing a great job with PrepperNet. And thank you, Sam, for coming on and adding, contributing everything that you did tonight. I always respect your work as well. A lot of other people do too. So, something that Sam said, really reminded me. I didn't really place much emphasis on it for no particular reason, that it just didn't occur to me, because we're talking about coronavirus. But Amron exists for emergencies and civil defense, and that's something that we've gotten away from. That used to be very much integrated or ingrained in the American psyche, was civil defense. And he's absolutely right. We are in the latent stages of low intensity conflict. I do also expect to see, conflict in our country. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but I know history, and I know that there seems to be irreconcilable differences, and there's increased willingness to carry out hostility. So whether you want it or not, it looks like something that we could be, wrapped up in and have to deal with. And we want to make sure that we can do our part to contribute to restoring or maintaining those, traditional American ideals and return to the rule of law and the Constitution. And that's what's really drawn the people to Amaron, I think, largely. And, I think also this is a great opportunity. It was really good to see some of the comments in the chat, because what this is ultimately a battle of good versus evil. These are satanic forces against Christ, against the church, against Christianity, the world against America. And I think that these are all going to provide opportunities to separate the wheat from the chaff, or separate the bone from the marrow. I think we're going to have an opportunity to truly have our faith tested, and our mettle is going to be tested. And my hope and my prayer is that believers will rise to the occasion and stand up and be willing to fight for what's right, and fight for our heritage if it comes to that. So that's the bottom line of what we're up against, and however that plays out, just be prepared, be ready. Now, we do have SOI version 4. Somebody asked, will that still be able to use version 3? Version 3 will be obsolete. We have implemented so many different changes to increase our effectiveness. The SOI version 4 will push out version 3. But if you purchase version 3, all future upgrades or updated versions are free to you anyway. So you just go to that download page and download the latest version. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We're training all the time. We're adding more stuff all the time. This SOI project has been a massive project, bigger than what I anticipated. So I'm further behind schedule than I ever thought I would be, but we're finally there, and so I'm excited. So now the plate's going to be cleared for us to start incorporating our net control station operator training. Now we're going to be able to start finally looking at Amaron University again, which we were hoping to do last year, but that got pushed back because of multiple factors. So we're looking forward to that. And if you're interested in emergency communications, you can join Amaron for free, just as a regular Amaron operator. If you're not licensed, you can just sign up as a relay, someone who receives information over a scanner or a shortwave radio, and then passes that on locally over CB, FRS, MERS to your local community. There is a paid version. It's Amaron Core, and that is where the rapid learning happens. And there's a ton of support. We use the Zello walkie-talkie app for staying in contact on a daily, regular basis. And there's so many guys that have gone from not licensed to tech to general to HF and on the air so fast. You're not alone. It seems daunting and it seems overwhelming, as complex as the communications can seem to be. But when you've got help, people are being fast-tracked to really high levels of proficiency on the air. And it's really exciting, and they're encouraged, and that just becomes contagious. So just want to encourage you to check that out at amaron.com, and check it out for a while with just the free membership. That might be good for you with whatever you got going on in your life right now, but definitely get plugged in. And we want to work toward expanding those local nets. That's been kind of a challenge. We've had local nets all across the country just thrive. Large networks, they're meeting regularly and they're really doing well. And other people are struggling trying to get local nets going in their area. So that's something we want to provide some tools to help the folks that are struggling a little bit to build up those local nets within your local communities. And I could just go on and on, but I don't know, we've gone long, but there's a lot of really cool stuff that we've been implementing. So just check it out at amaron.com. Download our team app. You'll see the banner on the right-hand side there for the Amaron team app, where you can get notifications, updates, intelligence briefs, and just a way to stay in touch with everyone. And that's all I got with that.
Hey, I appreciate it. Appreciate it, guys. I do want to share with everyone, we're going to have at least 3 more nights of this. And I've gotten so many encouraging emails that this should continue on. I'm not going to do it every night, but I am thinking about doing it once a week and bringing on guests and even letting other people host. So it's just not always myself. Maybe we could, Sam Kopler will come on and do a whole, a thing on a particular night, and JJS, I could let other people come on, but it's a way that we can kind of nationwide get together, talk, get our senses about ourselves, go back in our community, go back to our family, and take the things we learned, we share, and implement them, and definitely, maybe, tell others about it as well. So, if this has been, good information, which you guys have saying this, send us all, Mike, say, JJS, and send us all an email and let us know. And if you have questions, join their mailing list. They're here to help you. And, but this is what we have going on. I just want to thank you guys. You guys are the best experts in communications and intelligence in the community. And thank you for coming on. Thank you for both being on my PrepperNet expert panel as well. You guys have been amazing help. Sam and we've talked. Oh my gosh, we talk all the time, and I just text you with problems I have or issues, and you're there. And so I appreciate y'all's friendship. Guys, we're going to sign out, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Horace. Have a good night.